Today's agenda includes a welcome, a brief history and timeline of the performance management website, an overview of the performance management website, a demonstration and example of how to use the website, next steps, and lastly, a time for questions and answers. Now I would pass it on to Sharice Johnson, Director of the Division of Community Assistance, for her opening remarks. This will be followed by Manette Galindo, Branch Chief, for her remarks and introduction to the Policy Data and Evaluation team. Thank you.
Hello, CSBG state administrators, state associations, and national partners. We are so excited to officially introduce the CSBG Performance Management website, which is a product of collaboration and partnerships and input from the CSBG network. It's so exciting when you have others that come along with you to do great work, and we're so happy that we're able to show you some of the fruit of your work. The CSBG Performance Management website is the next step in reaching our peak. If we are successful doing this webinar, we hope you will leave with a strengthened understanding of the benefits of the website. We also want you to be able to see yourself in using the website in an interactive way in regards to gaining more data insights, in regards to just really understanding that data can tell a story and the impact of all of your work is often occurring, and the data kind of gives you a peek into that. And the goal is to equip the CSBG administrators, because the state administrators carry a significant role in this work, to tell that story in their state, to tell that story with their eligible entities, and to tell that story along with the federal government. Better data insights are a way to highlight the impact of this work that we try to accomplish, or we strive to accomplish in CSBG. These interactive data insights will also help the CSBG network better understand the needs across the populations we serve and inform decision-making accordingly. I want to take a quick moment, however, because we've had some people standing strong with us, to give special thanks to Arkansas, Mississippi, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Utah, and Wisconsin for participating, the state leads for participating in the CSBG Performance Management Working Group. Your input and feedback during the past year has been extremely useful to help us improve the website. And just and to learn more about what you experience as a state administrator in regards to your data collection methods. And it's been a great way to get to know states and also to know what's going on in states. As has been our model with the implementation of the Performance Management Framework and PEAK, the CSBG Performance Management website will continue to improve. And it can continue to improve best with your input, your support, and looking for opportunities to make this a successful website for all of the CSBG network. Today, to do so, we need you to log in, use the website, and provide us your feedback and input. We'll also provide opportunities for you along with others on ways to provide feedback. Along with training and technical assistance that are presently available to CSBG grant recipients, the Performance Management website is an additional valuable resource for achieving success. And achieving success is for the CSBG network, for each state, and for all of our eligible entities. The more we know, the stronger our stories, the more we can really rely on the fact that we're changing conditions and situations in communities. So we ask you to give us your undivided attention and join us in sharing more information about the CSBG Performance Management website as we work together to reach our peak. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our awesome leader, Manette Galindo, who will talk more about the PDE team and her role and her staff's role in bringing this webinar to you all today. Manette?
Thank you, Sharice, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. It is an honor and privilege to be here today with you all for one of our exciting new initiatives here within the Community Services Block Grant and Division of Community Assistance. As Sharice and Charles alluded, my name is Annette Galimbo, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the branch chief for the Policy Data and Evaluation Branch. And a quick overview and sort of meeting the folks that you'll hear from that'll spend a bulk of the time walking through the website with you all. The Policy Data and Evaluation Branch is actually coming up on its 1-year anniversary this month. Born out of the OCS Equity Action Plan, PDE was really put in place to make sure that one of our oldest block grants in the country had a strong policy data and evaluation posture, as do our other offices like LIHEAP and LIWAPA programs within OCS. Today, you will hear from 2 of the members of the PDE team, and you'll also see some of the folks available to you. I'm going to ask that we click to the next slide so I can introduce those talking today. So you heard the voice of Charles Cheer, our statistician, who also covers regions 3 and 10. And then you'll hear from Monique Alcantara, our management analyst, who covers regions 4, 6, and 7. Together, they serve as the performance management team leads. Our performance management work expands across a lot of our operations. We are so excited to debut this site. For some of you, it's not new to see. For some of you, you've probably been chomping at the bit to see it, along with the team of contractors here that support us through Reprise. Without further ado, I will turn it back over to the team, but we are so excited. We hope that you all take copious notes and are as eager to get a lot of the follow-up guidance that'll come to make sure that everyone from our states start to receive access so that they can start toying with the site, giving us feedback and input so that we can make it the best tool and make it of use to you all as you continue to expand how you tell the CSBG story to your respective stakeholders within your states and your regions. Monique, Charles, and Anisha, I'll turn it back to you all.
Thank you, Manette. I really appreciate that. I am briefly going to provide an overview of the history of the CSBG Performance Management Framework and the website, as well as the current timeline for fiscal year 2024. In fiscal year 2015, OCS began meeting with the CSBG network to introduce the Performance Management Framework. This was in response to the GIPRA Modernization Act of 2010 and included the CSBG State Plan, the annual report, accountability measures, organizational standards, Roma Next Gen, and the future implementation of the CSBG Performance Management website. In fiscal year 2018, OCS awarded the Performance Management System Development and Data Collection, Analysis, and Reporting for the CSBG Program Cooperative Agreement to the National Association for State Community Services Programs, or NASCAS, and the development of the CSBG Performance Management website began. In fiscal year 2021, OCS issued a contract to Reprise to continue the development of the CSBG website. And in fiscal year 2023, OCS established the Performance Management Working Group, or PMWG, consisting of 9 CSBG grant recipients to receive feedback and input on the CSBG Performance Management website as we continuously improve the website to increase accessibility to CSBG data and to better understand CSBG, and for the CSBG network to better tell the CSBG story. In December, OCS held an in-person meeting with the Performance Management Working Group, as well as a few representatives from state associations and NASCAS to discuss the next steps and the use of the Performance Management website as we prepared for this initial launch. As a follow-up to the in-person meeting, OCS began drafting the Performance Management Working Group charter, and today we are having the Performance Management website webinar as the first introduction, and we'll begin emailing CSBG grant recipients to provide access to the website no later than tomorrow. In April, we'll host listening and training sessions to provide opportunities for CSBG grant recipients to provide feedback and input and ask any questions that they may have since receiving access to the website. Starting in May, we'll begin providing access to state associations. This is an update to the original timeline and direct response to feedback we received from the Performance Management Working Group and the important role that state associations play in telling the CSBG story using CSBG data. We'll offer similar listening sessions to the state associations in June. Following that, we'll take a moment to make additional updates and mitigations to the website due to the feedback and input that we received during the listening sessions and during the initial access. I do want to add that this is a rolling timeline and we may need to continue to adjust it as we provide access to the network. We'll continue to keep the network informed of any timeline adjustments. I'll now pass to Charles to provide an overview of the website.
Thank you, Monique. I will now give an overview of the performance management website and its key features. Okay. When you go to the performance management website, there is a navigation bar where you can select the following options: About CSBG, Data Warehouse, Resources, Important Links, and Help. This is a good starting point to explore the features of the website. When you click on About CSBG in the navigation bar, it takes you to a page with a brief overview of the official CSBG website. If you click on the Learn More button on the page, it takes you to the official CSBG website. When you click on Resources on the navigation bar, it takes you to a page with guidance and reporting tools for performance management to better administer CSBG. For example, under the Tools to find CSBG information section on the web page, if you click on that section, you will see links to the state plan and annual report forms and a link to the online data collection system, otherwise known as OLDC. When you click on Important Links on the navigation bar, it takes you to a page with other online resources related to CSBG. For example, under the Federal Partner Sites section of this page, if you click on that section, it shows links for LIHEAP, weatherization, and so on. This page also provides important information such as contact information for CSBG offices at different levels of government and CSBG training and technical assistance partners. When you click on Help on the navigation bar, it takes you to a page where you can fill out a form to request assistance with navigating and using the website. You can also use this form to give general feedback about the website. When you click on Data Warehouse on the navigation bar, it takes you to a page with two key features of the website, which are CSBG Quick Facts and Advanced Data and Analytics. Please note that to access these features on the Data Warehouse page, you must log into the website. Toward the latter part of the webinar, Monique will provide further information on obtaining login access to the website. When you click on CSBG Quick Facts, it will take you to a page to choose pre-configured data reports. These reports are designed so that you can quickly pull up key program information on a single state or compare a single state's data with national data. This is a great place to start when you are not sure what you are looking for or are not yet familiar with the data available in the data warehouse. Please note that these pre-configured reports were designed based on the regular questions we receive from CSBG grant recipients such as states. We also expect that CSBG Quick Facts will expand as users become more familiar with the system and make recommendations. Overall, this reflects the approach we've been taking to develop the website, which are incremental updates and development to achieve a better user experience. Within Quick Facts, the pre-configured reports are organized into two categories, which are single state reports and national comparison, and a national comparison report. Single state reports allow users to look at information for a specific state in either one or multiple fiscal years. National comparison reports, on the other hand, allow users to look at data for a single state and compare it with aggregate national data for a single fiscal year. Within both the single state and national comparison categories, there are currently three pre-configured reports: types of eligible entities, remainder or discretionary funds, and organizational standard snapshots. Types of eligible entities show eligible entities in a selected state, as well as information about the eligible entities. Remainder or discretionary funds show details on how a selected grant recipient spent these funds. Organizational standards show the percentage of eligible entities within a selected state who've met organizational standards. Although it is not on this slide, we are also actively working on adding quick facts reports for questions such as how are CSBG funds allocated? How many individuals and households does CSBG serve? Who does CSBG serve by gender, ethnicity, and race? And who does CSBG serve by age range? We won't demonstrate the use of quick facts today, but we anticipate demonstrating this in the near future. When you click on Advanced Data and Analytics, it will take you to a page where you can build custom reports using parameters and criteria held within the data warehouse. This is particularly useful when you know what you are looking for or when you'd like to obtain a report that includes entity-level data. Please note that any report you can access via CSBG Quick Facts can also be generated using Advanced Data and Analytics, as long as you know the precise parameters to make such a query. In other words, the CSBG Quick Facts reports are just advanced data reports with preset search parameters. Now we will move on to the demonstration of the data warehouse website. One note before we move on to the demonstration. Time permitting, we will go through a few examples of generating reports at different user experience levels. Each of the reports has a swimming themed icon for the different user experience levels. The wade-in icon is beginner level, which is designed to get you started with using the website. The jump-in icon is intermediate level, which is designed to assist you in becoming even more familiar with the performance management website. And lastly, the deeper dive icon is advanced level, which is designed to help you become more advanced in the use of the performance management website. The facilitator of the demonstration for today is Anisha Sani. Anisha is a policy analyst at Apprise, where she provides support services for the Office of Community Services on the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, otherwise known as LIHEAP, and of course, the Community Services Block Grant, CSBG. Anisha assists with the development of the CSBG performance management website and has helped to train various members of the CSBG network on the functions and uses of the data warehouse. I will now pass it on to Anisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. So for this demonstration, we will use the following potential question that a CSBG state administrator may be asked by a stakeholder. So that question is, what was the impact of CSBG on employment outcomes for our state in 2021? So this demonstration acknowledges that there are several ways to respond to this question, as each state and eligible entity is unique. For this demonstration, we will focus on the following potential responses using the data available through the website. These are outcomes for unemployed adults, CSBG spending on employment, services to which CSBG funds contributed, work status of individuals served. We will show the different features of the website to pull the data and display as a data table or graph. For this demonstration, I will be using the state of Wisconsin with their permission. Thank you again to Wisconsin for allowing us to use your data. So the first report that we are going to work on is by identifying some Employment National Performance Indicators, or NPIs, that the CSBG eligible entities in our state reported for that year. In 2021, the CSBG eligible entities who reported employment outcomes had the option to set targets for several FNPIs. We will focus on FNPI 1G, unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment with a living wage or higher for at least 6 months. So the data warehouse can help us furnish statistics about how to support this claim. To generate a report about the National Performance Indicator, we are now going to head to the data warehouse. So now that we're in the data warehouse, we are going to select Advanced Data and Analytics. This is going to take us to step 1, where we select the years and geographic level of data that we want to use. So for this example, we will select the fiscal year 2021, and we are interested in state level of geographic data. As I mentioned before, we are using Wisconsin as our example. So for this example, I will select Wisconsin. Moving on to step 2, this is where we are going to select the data fields that we want to use. So we are interested in a national performance indicator, which is housed in the individual and national performance indicators topic area. And since we are interested in looking at employment, we are going to select the subtopic employment FNPI 1. From here, we are interested in FNPI 1G. So I'm going to scroll in the data field selection until I get to unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment for at least 180 days with a living wage or higher. And I'm going to make sure I select that statewide total rather than the entity level data, since we are looking at state totals. Now I'm going to move on to step 3, where we can see the data field that we selected, as well as the columns that are available for that particular data field. So for FNPIs, we have information about participants served and actual results, as well as targeting information. So because we have a combination of percentages as well as numbers, in the 4th step, we are only going to be able to create a data table. So we have data table only selected, and we can add a title, so FNPI 1G, for example, as well as the subtitle fiscal year 21. And we can select create data report to generate our report. So we've now generated a data table that can serve as a visual to accompany our response, and we can download this table into Excel to complete additional analyses. To do so, we would select Download CSV at the bottom left-hand corner. With our data, we can tell the stakeholder the following. In 2021, the CSBG eligible entities in Wisconsin set targets to help 50 unemployed adults statewide obtain and maintain employment for at least 180 days with a living wage or higher. Their statistics show that they were successful in achieving this goal for 29 unemployed adults that they served, or 58% of their overall target. So this is our first report that we generated using the data warehouse. CSBG eligible entities may also report the number of unemployed adults who obtain and maintain employment for a wage that is less than the living wage target. So we can customize our existing report to add in this information as well. To do so, I am first going to select Customize Report at the top left of the screen. Here we can see that all of the parameters we selected from the original report are going to maintain being selected. So we have our fiscal year 2021 selected, as well as our state data as the geographic level of data and the state that we selected. So in step 1, we're not going to have to make any changes to this step. Moving on to step 2. Here, we don't need to make many changes as well. We already have the outcomes topic area selected, so we have FNPIs as our topic area. We are still interested in looking at employment as our subtopic. And this time we are going to want to add an additional data field. So we already have FNPI 1G selected, and we're going to go ahead and add FNPI 1C, unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment for at least 90 days up to a living wage. This outcome will demonstrate an additional outcome, the number of participants served, as well as the targeting information for an additional outcome. So once we have this selected, and again, at that statewide level, we're going to scroll and we can see that we have 2 FNPI selected as data fields, and we're not going to want to change any of the filters for this step that we have selected. So all of them are automatically selected, and we're not going to make any changes in step 3. In step 4, we can update our title, and we still have data table only selected. So with that information in place, we are going to select Create Data Report. And so here we can see that we have our original FNPI 1G from our first report. And if you scroll to the right, you have FNPI 1C, which is the one that we additionally selected. The statistics from 2021 show that the CSBG eligible entities in Wisconsin targeted to achieve this outcome for 211 unemployed adults, and that they were successful in achieving this outcome for 179 individuals, which was about 85% of their overall target. So we can report these statistics to our stakeholder to provide an additional set of employment outcomes that were achieved. We can also, again, download this as a CSV if we wish to do further analysis in Excel. After discussing some of these outcomes that were achieved by CSBG eligible entities, our stakeholder asks us a follow-up question. Can you provide me with more information on how the CSBG eligible entities were able to achieve those outcomes using CSBG funding? Prior to sharing this information, we may want to first explain the role of CSBG funding. So CSBG funding is abraded with other funding sources, and so it is more appropriate to say that we can show how CSBG contributed to these outcomes. Then we can use the website to show how CSBG funds contributed to different domains by giving our stakeholder information on what share of CSBG funding was used on various domains in 2021. So we are going to start from the beginning by selecting Data Warehouse and Advanced Data and Analytics. So I'm going to take you through the steps to generate this from the beginning, but you do also have the opportunity to customize that original report that we were looking at earlier. So for this, we are going to go back into step 1, and we are going to select 2021 state data and go back to our example state, which is Wisconsin. From here, we are going to go into step 2, and instead of going into FNPIs, since we're interested in expenditure data, we are going to select the topic area, Eligible Entity Expenditures, Capacity, and Resources, Module 2. In the subtopic, we are interested in expenditures, so that's what we will select. And again, we don't want to select the by entity level information, rather we want to select the statewide total. And we are interested in looking at CSBG expenditure domains. What this data field will give us is a series of columns, each for a different domain, as well as the total amount of CSBG spending in the state for fiscal year 21. So since we're interested in looking at all of the different expenditure domains, we're not going to make any changes to the filters that are automatically selected in step 3. In step 4, now you see that we have the option to create a data table, line graph, or a bar graph. For our purposes, we are going to select bar graph, and we can title our report, for example, CSBG expenditure domains, followed by fiscal year 21 as our subtitle. And now we will create a bar graph. So here is the bar graph we generated, and I am just going to zoom in a little bit to make that more clear. And so what we have is a visual representation of the share of CSBG funds spent on employment compared to the other domains. Using this graph as a reference, we can tell our stakeholder that the state received $11.21 million in CSBG funds. And if you hover over this bar, you can see that number more clearly at the top pop-up. You can also see this number if you scroll and you have this data table available to you, furnishing the numbers that are available in the bars. So we have $11.21 million in CSBG funds that the state received. And of those, we see that employment is this left-hand-most bar, and we see that 1.03 million of those funds were spent on employment programs. So as you can see in this bar graph, this is similar to the spending on education and cognitive development, as well as spending on agency capacity building. The state, as demonstrated by this graph, spent the most amount of funds on housing, as well as health and social and behavioral development. One additional feature that we can use this interactive graph for is removing columns as necessary to make our report more specific. So to do so, we can click the labels in the key to remove columns. So for example, if we want to just compare employment spending with total spending, we can select each of these labels in the key to one by one remove the other bars from our analysis. So by doing so, I have now created a graph only of the employment spending and the total spending. And this is a way to create a more specific graph without having to customize the report or create a new report. And we can download this as an image or a PDF by selecting these top 3 lines in the top right corner. And we can take this data table and once again download it into an Excel file. So in addition to this next report that we've created, we can create an additional report to show our stakeholder what types of employment services were implemented by CSBG eligible entities and how many individuals received each service. So to do so, instead of creating a new report, this time I will show you how to customize your existing report so that we do not have to make any changes here in step 1. As you can see, 2021 is selected. The state data geographic level of data is selected, and we still have Wisconsin selected based on the search parameters that we entered for the previous report. From here, we're going to go into step 2. And now we are interested in looking at the services that were provided by CSBG eligible entities. So instead of clicking on module 2, we are now going to select module 4. And as a subtopic, we are interested in employment services. So the data fields that are going to be selected here are different categories of employment services that are offered. So here we have, in addition to the categories, individuals served. So we're going to select each of the statewide total categories of employment services. So we have individuals served for skills, training, and opportunities for experience. We have individuals served for career counseling, individuals served for job search, those who are served for post-employment supports, and those who are served for employment supplies. And we're going to make sure that we're not selecting those by entity options. Now in step 3, we can see each of the data fields that we selected in the previous step. And we do want to remember that we have selected CSBG expenditure domains in our previous report. Since we are no longer interested in this, we are going to select delete to remove that from the new report. I am also going to just quickly show you the filters that are available for these services. So when you select set filter, you can see that all of these columns are included, and these columns are the specific services that are available in each category of employment related services. So for skills training and opportunities for experience, these are the services that were provided. For career counseling, we have workshops and coaching, so on and so forth. And each of these columns is eventually going to become a bar in the bar graph that we are going to generate. So in step 4, as I said before, we are going to want to create a bar graph, and we are going to want to update this to reflect our new report. We can, and again, make sure that bar graph is selected and click Create Data Report to now see our new report. So what this report is showing is that CSBG funds supported services in the following categories: skills training and opportunities for experience, career counseling, job search, post-employment supports, and employment supplies. And if we scroll up, we can see these specific services that were provided and the number of individuals served. So you can see that the services that was most frequently provided was under career counseling, and that was coaching, which was provided to 621 individuals. Another thing that you can do with this number of individuals served is that you can add up all the individuals served and say that 3,829 individuals were served by an employment service in fiscal year 21. We do want to acknowledge, however, that one individual may have been served by multiple employment services. If we show our stakeholder the interactive bar graph on this website directly, as I mentioned before, we can hover over each of these individual columns for a bit more information about what they are representing. And we also can see the number of individuals served rather than seeing the estimate in the bar graph. Again, we can download this by selecting the 3 lines in the top right corner, and we can download the table that is generated as an Excel file by clicking Download CSV. So based on this information, our stakeholder then asks, can I tell exactly which type of employment program resulted in the positive outcomes that we highlighted before? Now, we do want to specify that it is important to remember that CSBG eligible entities do more for individuals than just enroll them in a single program. They work with an individual to see what services they need and aim to help them achieve the targeted outcome. So currently, CSBG eligible entities track the employment status of the individuals that they serve so they can document what the final outcome was, rather than trying to tie a particular outcome to an individual service. However, it is possible for CSBG eligible entities to use their own case management records to look at the individuals that achieved the targeted outcomes, what types of services that individual received, and then make some assessments of why their services succeeded for that individual. After discussing the individuals that CSBG eligible entities served and the various employment services that were provided, our stakeholder then might ask, how does CSBG help support the employment programs implemented by CSBG eligible entities? In response to that question, we might highlight that the CSBG eligible entities do capture information on the employment status of many of the individuals that they serve. We can use the all characteristics report to show that many of the people served by CSBG eligible entities are already employed and come to the agency needing housing support, energy assistance, medical assistance, or other services. They may also receive career advancement related services. So while CSBG funding may be used to support employment programs, the funding may be used to support a broader array of programs implemented by CSBG eligible entities. So to generate an additional report about participant characteristics in the data warehouse, we are once again going to select Data Warehouse, and we are going to hit Advanced Data and Analytics to allow us to re-enter the information that we're interested in. So in step 1, that's 2021, state data, and the state that we're interested in this case, Wisconsin. In step 2, we are now looking at the all characteristics report, which is module 4 data. So we are going to select all characteristics report, followed by individual level characteristics, since work status is an individual level characteristic. And the data field for work status is all the way at the bottom. We are going to make sure we select statewide total of work status, and work status information is furnished for individuals who are over the age of 18. In step 3, we have a series of columns selected. However, to start with, we are going to just identify the number of individuals for whom we have employment information. So we are going to unselect each of the work status types, and we are just going to leave unknown and not reported and total as our columns to include. In step 4, we can generate a bar graph of this information. We can add a title if we please and select Create Data Report. So here is the data report that was generated. And using this graph, we can tell our stakeholder that the state has information on the work status of 47,718 adults. The reason being that 43,139 individuals reported as unknown or not reported. So now that we have established how many individuals we have work status information for, we can provide a more specific answer to our stakeholders' question regarding the need for CSBG funding to support employment services. So this report has indicated that work status information is available for 47,718 individuals. To generate a report about the work status of participants for which we have information available, we are once again going to select Customize Report in the top left of the screen. Here we have all of the information we need for step 1 still selected from that previous report that we generated. In step 2, we are also only going to continue looking at work status information. And in step 3, this is where we're going to make some changes. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to include all of the additional columns that we removed before. So now we will be generating a report that demonstrates the different work status types of the individuals for whom we have information for. And since we already looked at the unknown and not reported and total populations, we can unselect those and move on to our final step, which is creating a bar graph. Bar graph should already be selected. We can add a title if we please, and then we can click Create Data Report to view the final report that we are going to look at in this example. And what this report shows is that about 9,347 individuals were unemployed either in the short term or in the long term, and that 9,537 individuals were not in the labor force, while 12,132 individuals were employed full-time. Keep in mind that there were individuals served by CSBG funds for which we do not have work status information. So using this information, we can demonstrate to our stakeholder the need to support employment services for individuals who are unemployed. We can also explain the need for services related to career advancement for those who are already employed. And again, we can download this using these 3 arrows. We have this data table available to us at the bottom to furnish the complete numbers that of individuals that fall into each of these work status types, and we can download this using download CSV. So now we are going to head back to the PowerPoint for a quick summary before turning it over for next steps. So the reports that we generated throughout this demonstration showed how we can use the data warehouse to explain various facets of the role of CSBG funds in supporting employment services and contributing to employment outcomes for participants in need of employment services. We started by telling our stakeholder about some important employment-related outcomes that CSBG funds helped to accomplish. Specifically, we looked at FNPI 1G, unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment for at least 180 days with a living wage or higher, and FNPI 1C, unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment for at least 90 days up to a living wage. After sharing with our stakeholder these outcomes, in response to a follow-up question, we specified to our stakeholder that CSBG funds serve to leverage other funding sources, but that CSBG eligible entities spent about $1.03 million on employment services out of the $11.2 million that this state received in CSBG funding in 2021. This is comparable to spending that was spent on education and cognitive development. After learning about the CSBG funding allocated to employment, the stakeholder wanted to know more about which services these funds contributed. We were able to show our stakeholder the number of individuals served in 5 employment-related service categories, and that between these services, 3,829 participants were served, though one participant may have been served by more than one service. After discussing with the individuals that CSBG eligible entities served, we also looked at additional employment services, and we looked at how CSBG supports employment services. We answered this question by sharing the work statuses of the participants in programs to which CSBG funds were contributed. After learning that among those for whom we have information, 9,347 individuals were unemployed in the short term or long term, 9,537 individuals were unemployed and not in the labor force, and 12,132 individuals were employed full-time. We demonstrated the importance of the contribution of CSBG funds in producing outcomes for unemployed adults to obtain and maintain employment and outcomes achieved by employed adults related to career advancement. That concludes the demonstration portion of this webinar, and I will now turn it over to Monique to discuss next steps.
Thank you, Anisha. I hope that demonstration was a useful overview of some of the uses and mechanisms of the website. I know that it may seem like a lot in a small amount of time. These slides will be available to walk through as you receive access to the website. And we will also provide guided activity sheets. And as I mentioned earlier, we will also host listening and training sessions to assist you in becoming more comfortable with the use of the website. As I also noted earlier, initial access will be granted to CSBG grant recipients, specifically state and territory lead agencies. For the initial launch, OCS will provide access to 2 representatives from each CSBG lead agency. Additional representatives from the lead agencies will be added in the future, but this will allow us to better support the network during this initial access. We recommend that at least one of the representatives is a CSBG primary point of contact or the state administrator. I'll also want to note that initially each grant recipient will only have access to the data within their state or territory. As we continue to update access, we will also allow access to regional data and eligible entity data. By tomorrow, March 6th, please look for an email from your data and evaluation specialist, which will request that you confirm the name and email addresses for both representatives from the lead agency. There's no requirement that 2 staff receive access, and so if you only choose to have access for one, please confirm within your response. Within a week of receiving your response, your data and evaluation specialist will follow up with instructions to create your account and some activity guides to assist you in navigating the website. As a reminder, here are the data and evaluation specialists for each region. So regions 4, 6, and 7 should look out for an email from me. Regions 3 and 10 should expect an email from Charles. Regions 1, 2, and 5 should expect an email from Melanie. And regions 8 and 9 should expect an email from Lena. If you do not receive an email by tomorrow, please feel free to follow up with your specialist directly. Lastly, I want to announce that we will host a session at the NASCAS Winter Conference on March 14th at 1:45 p.m. This will be an interactive session as a follow-up to this presentation. We'll further explore CSBG quick facts that Charles noted earlier and the advanced data and analytics that Anisha demonstrated today. So we do ask that for those of you attending to bring your laptops. For those not attending, we do expect additional opportunities for interactive sessions in the future.